You can get worldwide tops and mariokart Deluxe. Don't believe me? Well, today I prepared some tips for you that will help you get your first top 10 time in this game. Here we go. So, here we are, and just like I talked about in my last video, I'm here once again with a face cam. I hope you guys like it. And yeah, I will start this video off with some more general tips that will help you get better at Mario Kart and get better at time trials in general, so you can reach the skill level required to get worldwide tops. And after that, I will discuss some more worldwide top grind specific tips that will help you make the final push for your first top 10. And as you can see, there's some B-roll footage of me playing SNES Rainbow Road. I'm currently going for the world record here, so if you want to shimmy on, make sure to check out my Twitch. But yeah, with that being said, let's get right into the tips. So yeah, the first tip is, in my opinion, also the most important tip out of all of the ones I will present to you today. So if there's one thing that you have to take away from this video, it's this following tip. And that is to be as diverse and as flexible as possible when it comes to time trialing. Now, what does that exactly mean? So, the basic gist of it is that you want to play as many different tracks, as many different skill sets as you possibly can. Do not just focus on one specific track, or only play baby tracks, only play speed tracks, whatever it may be. You gotta try to branch out as much as possible, try all kinds of skill sets, because that's the best way to improve at time trials, honestly. Play as much as you can and always play other stuff, because sure, you will get a better time on a specific track if you grind it for long enough, but you're not gonna get much better at the game in general. You will only improve at this one specific track. So you gotta branch out, try all kinds of things, and that kind of goes into the second tip I have for you guys as well, which is to just experiment. Even if there are some strats which may seem too difficult or too annoying at first, I would advise you to try them out nonetheless. Try to implement them, and if it doesn't end up working out, then you don't have to commit to it. But it's important that you try out things, that you try to learn new strats, because those will make you better. Even if they end up not being fast for you, you have still learned something. And if you do that enough, eventually you will pick up on some things all by yourself. You will get better, and that's a really, really good way to improve at time trials, in my opinion. Another one is to study world records, study other top 10 times, just to kind of get the idea of what you have to do on the track. And if you want, you can also try racing goes from other top players in the top 10 or whatever, to see where you're losing time, what you can do better than what you're already doing. And watching top players will make you get better a little bit as well, even if you're not playing yourself, because you can just see what you have to do to drive a little bit faster, and eventually you will pick up on these things yourself. So watch the world records, watch top 10 times, and just try to pick up on as many different things as you can. And my fourth and last general tip to just improve at time trials is to ask others for help if needed. The time trialing community is great, in my opinion, because there are many people in there that are willing to help, that are willing to teach other people stuff. Even if they're not the best player in the game themselves, there are many very nice people that will try their best to help you out. So I've linked 2 different Discord servers for you in the description of this video. One of them is my own Discord server. You can join that if you want and ask for help if needed, and either I or someone else out of my community will help you out. And I've also linked the mariokart Leaderboards Discord server, which is kind of the time trial hub of mariokart Deluxe. And there are a lot of people in there. Surely someone will help you out there if you just ask. So it's a great way to improve if you learn from others, and together as a community we can all improve that way. And while you're already on your way to the description, make sure to subscribe to the channel as well. I would appreciate it a lot. I'm trying to hit 600 subs, so if you want, you can help me out. I would appreciate it. But yeah, let's get into the tips. For a more specific worldwide tops grind, let's say you've already improved enough at the game where you are perhaps a second or half a second away from worldwide tops. That's when I would advise you to make the final push for your first top 10, if that's what you want to do. And once you've reached that level, there are a few specific things I would advise you to do to make that final push. So let's get right into those tips as well, shall we? So yeah, once you've reached that point, you should start focusing on one track, which is a bit, you know, contrary to what I told you before, where I want you to branch out. But once you have reached the skill level required to get worldwide tops, that's when you can start honing in on one specific track, maybe your favorite track, maybe your best track, whatever it is, just a track you want to get worldwide tops on. And you know, really grind that out. As I mentioned before, watch the world record, watch top 10 times, really study them frame by frame if you want, and you know, see what you can do better to save those last few milliseconds. And you know, if you focus enough on this track, eventually you will pick up on some things yourself, some time losses of yours. And if you watch world records and watch the top 10 times, maybe you can see a few differences there. Especially if you look at the 10th place, for example, sometimes they don't do the most optimal strats. So if you compare it to the world record and you see a few things that you can improve on, that could be a time to shine and break into the top 10 potentially. So yeah, try to get as much input as you can and really hone in on this one track. It's super important. But while you are grinding for a first worldwide top, you know, you gotta be ready for the fact that it might take a while. There are so many great time trialers in this game, and you know, a top 10, as the name implies, only has 10 spots. So you know, you gotta beat some great players to break into a top 10, and that might require some time. So you gotta be ready for it, you gotta be patient enough, and most importantly, you gotta be able to take some breaks as well, because your mental game is super underrated. Or like the mental game in general, super underrated. If you have a good mental, good mindset, you can play a lot better than you might expect. And the key to having a good mindset is to take breaks whenever needed. Like, I myself know this feeling when you're so close to your goal or a personal best you want to get, but even in those situations, sometimes you just gotta take the L, as some might say, and take a break for a little bit, play some other tracks or play other games or do something else entirely and come back at a later point. Maybe if you want, try out some other tracks, as I mentioned earlier, and get better at the game so that your first worldwide tops become a little bit easier. But the most important thing is to just not burn out and not get demotivated too quickly. And even though such a grind can be frustrating, you gotta be able to lock in when needed. And if you feel like you can't do that anymore, just take a break for a little bit. That's completely fine. And the last tip is kind of similar to one I gave earlier, but once again, it is to ask others for help. But in this case, you can be a little bit more specific. You can, you know, ask someone else to add you, to watch your time, and to, you know, ask them where you are losing time in certain spots. Because the closer you get to worldwide tops or the closer you get to world record, the harder it will be to find out your time losses yourself. Because when you are, let's say, 5 or 10 seconds behind the world record, there are some general tips people can give you to get better. But most of the time, there are so many big things you can still work on that there's no need to do like an in-depth analysis or whatever. But if you get super close to worldwide tops, maybe some things aren't too obvious at first, and that's when you can really start asking others, maybe ask top players for help. Most of them are super nice and are willing to help others. So, you know, ask them for helps, ask them to, you know, give you some key points to work on, perhaps some things that may not be too obvious at first. And once again, you can join one of the 2 Discord servers I linked in the description. And, you know, surely there will be someone that will be able to help you out. And even if that's not the case, just go back to what I told you earlier. Study as many different ghosts as you can. Try to find out what they're doing differently than you and try to pick up on those things and work on them to eventually make the push for your first top 10 time in a game. And as a more general tip, perhaps, I would advise you to, of course, play whatever track you want. That's the number one thing. But if you're kind of struggling to find the track for you, I would advise you to start with a booster track, because the top 10 times on the booster tracks are generally a little bit less optimized, so it's a tiny bit easier to get tops on there. And you know, most people haven't like put in a lot of time into those tracks yet, because some of them are still more recent. So it will be a little bit easy to break into the top 10. And if there's one track I wouldn't advise you to play for your first top 10, that would be Big Blue. As you may have heard in a few of my previous videos, Big Blue, 200cc at least, has perhaps the strongest worldwide top 10 in the entire game. So, I mean, it's not impossible, but it would be a pretty big challenge for you. So, you know, maybe start with a boosted track for a first top 10. and work from there in the future. But yeah, as a little summary, the number one thing you should do is to just get good enough at the game to maybe be a second or so away from your first worldwide top 10. And once you've reached that point, you can start really honing in on one track to get worldwide tops. But before that, I would advise you to not worry about it too much and try to get better at the game first with the tips I mentioned earlier in the video. And once you do that enough and you get close enough, you can make that push for a first top 10. And you know, once you get your first tops, it will be a lot easier after that, a lot less pressure, a lot less nerves. So I wish you good luck on your adventures. But yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.